back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hey guys! So I'm here to review two books that I read a little while ago now, but I wanted to talk to you about them because I enjoyed them both. So let's get started with Ravensong by TJ Klune. Now this is the second one in a series, so I will not spoil it, but this is quite an interesting second book. The first book we largely are following Joe and Ox, who are our main characters, whereas in this book, this one actually starts kind of in parallel with the ending events of book number one. But it's told through a different viewpoint. So this viewpoint is Gordo. Gordo is the witch for the Bennett pack of werewolves, and he kind of has denied his fate for a long time. We find out a lot of his backstory in this particular book, which is really nice to see because I definitely feel like he was quite an elusive and mysterious character in book number one, and I really enjoyed getting to know him a bit more, and especially to know his backstory and why he is the way he is. There is a love interest in this book. It is not anywhere nearly as overt and rompy and angsty as the one in book number one. However, there are still some angsty moments, so it certainly still feels like it has a little bit of a YA tint or a slant to this series, which I don't dislike. It feels very easy to get into this series again. I didn't feel like, even though I'd had a break between book one and two, I didn't feel like I had forgotten things. It felt like I could ease my way back into the world pretty quickly. And I did really enjoy seeing not only Gordo and a little bit more backstory on Gordo, but also a couple of our other sort of side characters. We get to explore them a little bit further in this particular book. I did miss having Joe and Ox as our kind of main characters, and actually they're really not a huge part of this particular book. They are there in the background, but their story doesn't move on a huge amount until later on. I kind of wanted to see a bit more of them because this one did feel like it was kind of going off slightly on a tangent of Gordo, which is not the end of the world, but I would just have liked maybe a little bit more overlap of those characters we saw in book one, I suppose. I do think that this one definitely carries the plot forward, maybe not as far as I expected because it is a chunky book, but because there is so much jumping back into Gordo's past, which was good, I enjoyed it, but because there's so much of that, actually the plot of the whole series doesn't move on quite as far as I imagined it would over the course of reading this book. However, we do get introduced to a kind of new big bad, which is this illness, which is being released or maybe bred to attack werewolves, and specifically our pack gets involved in finding out who is behind this and why, and possibly being threatened by it themselves. So that big bad does come in and the plot does move on because of it, but I don't think it moved as far as I thought it would. I did enjoy that storyline. I do think it connected well to the previous book, and it does add up to some more intrigue of where we could be going. I'm particularly interested to see where book three goes now that we know a lot more than we did at the end of book one. So I'm really excited to continue the series, and I certainly will. And I ended up giving this a solid 4 stars in the end. I think with a little more plot and maybe a little bit more time on some characters I enjoyed a lot from book number one, it would have been a 5 stars, but because of those things, it's a 4 stars for me. Still very enjoyable though, and still certainly a series I would strongly recommend you guys pick up, especially because these new covers are just stunning and they're being republished by Tor. This is the second one that recently came out, but the third one I think is due the end of the year or something like that. It's not too far off. So yeah, very excited to see the re-released versions continuing to come out, and I'm excited to read more TJ because his books are just great. And the next book that I want to talk to you guys about is one that I read on my Kindle. I do not own the physical edition because it is huge, and that is The First Binding. Now, I picked this one up on my Kindle quite a while ago because I fully intended to get to it sooner than I did. I'm pretty sure that I saw quite a few different reviewers talk about this and say it was one of their best books of the year and just really exciting. And I really wanted to jump on that train, but then I kind of also fell off reading as much as I was, and I just couldn't really commit to going into it. I think it's like 800 or 900 pages, so it's a long read, and I knew that going in. So yeah, I eventually got around to diving into it. I think I started it when I was on holiday, actually. Perfect time to start a big read when you're on holiday. And I did get a fair way through. I got about a third of the way into it, and I really enjoyed it. The first section, fantastic, utterly beautiful writing. This has been compared a lot to The Name of the Wind, and I can absolutely see why. There is some crossover with the way that it's told as a narrative story, and kind of some of the events that happen are similar. However, I would say that a lot of the events that do happen are not, native to The Name of the Wind. That book stole from other books or took inspiration from other books, and this one does the same. I can definitely see the comparisons, but I would say this is a book in its own right, and I enjoyed it fully for its own aspects and elements. I don't think that the author stole from The Name of the Wind specifically. I think they took inspiration, but I don't think they took anything that wasn't already very much a fantasy trope and put it into their own words. So this story is following a character called Ari. Now, Ari is at the point that we meet him. He is in this inn. He is working kind of as a storyteller. He's getting to know the local people there, and he bumps into one particular, I think she's a singer, kind of forms a connection with her very quickly and starts to tell her his life story. Now, he is a storyteller, so not only do we get his life story, but we also get various other stories of the history of this world, some of the creation stories, some of the stories of fairy tales, folk tales of the world. And the telling of stories is completely key to this particular book, and it's done in a beautiful, very lyrical, very atmospheric way. I could vividly imagine the descriptions of some of these stories, and I think that is a true credit to the author and his writing, because sometimes I find it hard to discover worlds in my imagination as I'm reading them. I can see bits and pieces, but I don't always feel like it's a fully fleshed out vision. With this, I could totally imagine it. I could see him in the inn telling this story with the magic of the bindings helping him. Now, bindings are the magic of this world, and there are different bindings that you can learn and master. Very few people are able to master any bindings, let alone all of them. But of course, Ari is supposedly rumoured to have mastered them all. Now, he is a very famed character, and a lot of his fame comes from stories that he has woven himself over the years, or exaggerated, or caused to be a little bit more than they actually were. So it's really interesting to hear his point of view on some of the situations he gets into. He starts his life and as one of the lowest of the low. Like, he comes from the worst caste in civilization. He lives under the stage at a theatre, and he just kind of helps with odd jobs there. He doesn't really have huge aspirations or know where he wants to go with his life, other than he'd like to get on the stage at some point. But he meets a man who comes in and shows him the potential of learning bindings. And when that happens, his whole future changes, and he has a path forwards that he wants to learn and follow. But some devastating things happen. I won't go into detail. And these, of course, change the journey of his life. He has to do some soul searching, some development, some learning, some wising up to the ways of the world, shall we say, before he can go on his journeys. And even when he does, it's still a continuous journey of learning and developing and changing, not just the magical side, but also the scholar side of himself, the inventor, the character who can tell stories and weave stories. He is many faceted, and we learn all of those facets through his story as we go through, with some small interruptions from this lady singer who he's telling the story to. Now, personally, I didn't love the relationship between the two of them. It didn't feel supernatural. It felt quite awkward at times to me, and I didn't feel like it was just that genuine for them to have kind of
fallen into a romantic relationship pretty quickly. However, besides that, I did enjoy a lot of the other relationships and characters that were brought up in the story. I particularly like the magic of this world. It seems like it has an awful lot of potential, and we do have some pretty interesting side characters like the professors and the other people that he meets on the streets. Lots of interesting characters to sink your teeth into. So it is a very, very fleshed out world with a lot of potential to come, and I'm really keen to continue the series, especially because the ending felt very climactic to me. I do think the middle has a bit of a lull, and actually that's where I kind of got not stuck, but it was very slow going for me in the middle section. I did think the beginning was fantastic. I thought the end was really good, but that middle just had maybe a few too many pages for my liking. I think some of it could certainly have been cut down, but with an 800 or 900 page book, that's always kind of going to be the case. So yes, I did enjoy it an awful lot, but that middle section took a little bit of forcing myself to pick it back up and get back into the story. I do enjoy big epic fantasies, and I just think this one had its moments, but still, I really enjoyed the overall thing. I definitely at times thought it was going to be a 5-star read, and it was only really that relationship and that slow section that kind of brought it slightly down for me. So I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. I definitely am excited to see where it goes, and I will be continuing the series very soon. I'd love to hear if you guys have read either of these books or if you plan to pick either of them up. I'm excited to hear your thoughts. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you again in another video very soon. Bye all!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.